Back with some overly sarcastic productions, and it's on another trope talk, and this time on sea monsters. I have not written any sea monsters into my stories because, well, I don't know, I think, enough about the sea, like sailing terms, so I think to really write anything on the sea. So I haven't yet. But let's go ahead and dive right in.
Buddy, did you know that I make a comic? No? I should really say that more often.
Oh yeah, she's mentioned that before. Completely forgot about it.
Well, I do. Now,
Oh my god, that art is sick!
for the next trick, did you know the comic is becoming a physical book? Possibly even two. I know.
Oh shit, that's pretty sick. Oh, and she's getting it distroed by Simon. Lucky ass motherfucker. Well, that makes sense. She's famous.
Right? The world is just full of surprises today. Yeah,
There's a
so
big
I have a
audience.
comic. It's called Aurora. It is high fantasy,
And I am still jealous.
magic, superheroics, bunch of cool weirdos teaming up to go on an exciting journey to do a bunch of cool hero stuff. I have a really good time making it. It's getting a physical publication thanks to the publisher Andrews McMeel. They're publishing the first 11 chapters in one consolidated volume. It's got a bunch of extra cool stuff in it. Also, some of the art has been fixed, and I apparently don't know what an M- is, so we fixed that too. If you are curious,
I don't even know what an M- is. I've used it, I think, somewhere in a book. And I had to... I went to so many different articles, so many different posts on the internet trying to explain what an M- was, and I still did not understand it. English is dumb.
or interested, the entire comic is available for free on my website, comicaurora.com, and if that breaks, because that's what happened the last time I mentioned this in a video, the whole thing is mirrored on Tumblr. I will have links to both
Of course
in the
it's on
description.
Tumblr.
So if you want to check that out, feel free. And if you want to pre-order the volume, which is getting physically printed at the end of July, you can do that too. There's a link to a bunch of different options in the description. And without further ado, on to the actual video you clicked on. The ocean is a truly beautiful thing, isn't it? A
No, it's scary. I don't like the ocean. It's deep. And scary. Very scary. If I cannot see the bottom of something, I don't want to be near it.
marvel of nature, temperament.
And I cannot see the bottom of the ocean. I can't see the bottom of Lake Michigan. But you know what I avoid? I avoid Lake Michigan. I walked along the river walk one time. The moment I saw the water and the waves, I was like, huh, no. And I made very deliberate steps away to get further away from the edge. And I wasn't even that close to the edge of the walk. But
Mental in her moods, an alluring mistress calling out to the wanderlust in the soul of every sailor, a mysterious siren song that sounds from wind and wave, drawing the unwary ever deeper. Unfathomably
But you know what? If sirens were real, maybe I would go to the ocean. I am easily... Yeah. Sirens, titties out. I'm a simple man.
dark, unbearably cold, the world's largest graveyard, the Whale Road, the old gray widowmaker, keeper of untold treasures, man-made and natural alike. It's the force that swallowed Doggerland, the most tangible reminder of the gravitational pull of the moon, the source of our planet's very first mass extinction event that gave us our oxygen atmosphere. Some of the creatures that call it home feel like they'd be cozier in outer space, but we're chucking rocks from a glass house whenever we make that judgment, because we started out in the ocean, and the only reason we left it behind is we figured out a convenient way to pack up the ocean for overland transport and called it blood. Maybe it's because I was a Great Lakes kid, but frankly, I think the ocean is a little bit much. There's just way too much going on in there. It's too big, too deep, and way too crowded. Don't want to swim in it, don't want to sail in it, don't love smelling it, and I'm only sort of good with admiring it from a respectful distance.
Yes, Red. I disagreed heavily with you in regards to Link in the last Trope Talk video I watched, but here we are back in agreement.
I don't trust it to do anything except potentially kill me and feel nothing. But the good news
Yes.
is I can feel however I want about the ocean, and it won't matter jack diddly, because I'm 10 gallons of salt water pretending to have an opinion about the other 325 quintillion gallons. I'm a rounding error. I'm gonna get outvoted. The ocean is our go-to comparison for everything that is too much for us to get a grip on. Complicated things have depths. Hard-to-find information is dredged up. Incomprehensible things are unfathomable. Enormous things are oceanic. Complex and confounding problems need to be navigated. The ocean is the kind of thing that makes me understand why people get so hung up about gods. It's hard not to interpolate some sort of personality or will onto something so simultaneously enormous and unpredictably destructive. It'd be one thing if the ocean just sat there like your average tree or non-volcanic mountain, but the ocean has more in common with weather than
It's just sitting there. Wetly. Well, water's not wet. It makes things wet. I will fight anyone that says water is wet. It is not. It makes things wet. Water is the thing that makes you wet. Okay? It cannot, the thing that makes you wet cannot be wet. It is wet. It is the wet. It cannot be because it is. You know what I mean? Shut the fuck up.
it does the rest of the Earth's biomes, in the sense that it can go from fine to extremely deadly in the space of minutes. It's one of the only parts of the Earth that actually constantly operates on a perceivable...
You know what? We are going to a scholarly source for this. Is water wet? Fuck up AI. r/chemistry. Uh-huh. 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 I see. A fluid like water is only wet from the perspective of the surface it interacts with. Uh-huh. Oh, they're using big words that scare me. BBC Science Focus magazine. Scholarly source. Maybe, yeah, by a doctor. Sure, you have my privacy. Most scientists define wetness as a liquid's ability to maintain contact with a solid surface, meaning that water itself is not wet, but can make others... Fuck you, a doctor. Am I going to read the rest of this article? No. Actually, yes. But if you tie in wet as made of liquid or moisture, okay, as some do, then water and other liquids can be considered wet. Some people describe wetness as a physical cooling sensation experienced when water takes in energy. Aha! When water takes in. That does not mean water itself is wet. Oh god, here are more big words. Okay, it's a short article, actually. These are big words that hurt my brain. Clay, here you go. You're wrong. Water is not wet. That's how I did my takeaway from that article.
Human timescale. Plate tectonics we might understand intellectually, but it takes an earthquake or volcanic eruption for us to really perceive it, because the bulk of it happens too slowly for us to notice. Even something as comparatively speedy as tree growth operates on a timescale of months or
Speedy? Oh, hold on now.
years. The ocean moves and changes so fast, it's almost operating on an animal timescale, and that makes it very easy for us to see it as a living, thinking thing. And once we've done that, it's not too hard to start manifesting that idea in the concept of a sea monster. Sea monsters are a very popular concept throughout history, folklore, and modern fiction, because frankly, it's really easy to look at the ocean and think, boy, I bet that thing wants to fuck me up. Mythological ocean monsters were a classic staple of god and hero narratives, and they didn't always draw the distinction between a sea monster and a monster that is the sea. The Mesopotamian gods Abzu and Tiamat were simultaneously manifestations of fresh and
Tiamat, the five-headed dragon from Dungeons & Dragons.
saltwater, and big fuck-off monsters, and the Norse Jormungandr is a massive sea serpent that encircles the whole world and feels a lot more metaphorical than geographically literal.
Yeah, but if we take a look at, Angry Man on the Internet has L-Take, what the fuck are you talking about? Science backs me up. Water is not wet, okay? By that one article, by that one doctor, from my interpretation of the way they phrased things, because they did not really make a statement one way or the other themselves. So I made the statement for them.
For extra fun, some of the folkloric roots of the trope might themselves have roots in real ocean life. Sure, back in the 1600s, if Joe Sailor said his boat got grappled by a terrifying beast like a rubbery tree with prehensile branches, we might have called him a doofus. But ever since the confirmation of the existence of the giant squid and its gianter cousin the colossal squid, stories like that have sounded a little more grounded, so to speak. Tales of mysterious tiny islands appearing and disappearing overnight, or the depth gauges hitting something that feels like the seafloor miles above where it should be, could very well be chance encounters with the humble whale minding its own business or coming up for air. I mean, the word cetacean, the category of animals containing whales, literally comes from the Greek sea monster Cetus, the thing that tried to eat Andromeda and got one-shotted by Perseus for its troubles.
I
the
love
name
language
just
like that.
means sea monster. Life
English is dumb, but language is still cool.
Imitates art. There's also the real documented phenomenon of abyssal gigantism, which is basically just that species that live in the deep ocean are often a lot bigger than their cousins in the shallows. There's a lot of theories for what evolutionary pressures cause this. It's hard to study because we can't easily get down there without going pop, but we don't need to know why it happens to understand that.
Hey, let's just send some more billionaires down there. We've got too many.
It happens. The further down you go, the bigger the critters can get. That's pretty easy for us oceanic expats to wrap our heads around. So the short of it is, we know there's big things in the ocean. We know they get bigger the further down we go. And we know that, by the numbers, the extent of our understanding of the ocean's many species extends from somewhere around Jack to just north of shit. Every time we go down there, we find something new. And that makes it really easy to write up some fictional leviathan and drop it basically anywhere you'd like, as long as the waters are deep and dark enough to accommodate the prerequisite terrifying unknown. Now, the one limitation on sea monsters is that usually they're gonna start
What fucking game is that?
out in the water, obviously. If they didn't, they'd just be monsters, no sea involved. But there is a distinction to be made between obligate sea monsters and facultative sea monsters, which live in the sea but can become a very exciting problem when they decide to venture onto dry land. There's a lot less real-world precedent for terrifying monsters walking up out of the sea to become problems,
humans.
Unless you count the entire process of human evolution, but
fucking same wavelength red.
It's inarguably the most exciting and least limiting way to make a sea monster a more versatile problem causer. In stories like these, the oceanic nature of the monster might not end up all that prominent in its design, because the only thing the ocean is doing for this critter is concealing its existence until it decides to rampage its way up onto dry land. And since the ocean is really good at hiding things, this is extremely plausible. A lot of classic kaiju, like Godzilla, made their debut by rampaging their way up out of the water, and it's remained a classic way for them to become problems ever since. But that's ground I've already covered in its own video, so for now let's focus on obligate sea monsters that do their best monstering in and around the ocean itself. Now, by limiting ourselves in this way, we are also limiting the kind of stories we can unpack here, because in order for a sea monster to be relevant, our protagonists kind of need to come to them. There's really only two contexts where obligate sea monsters regularly appear, and those two contexts are on the water and in the water. Sea monsters are a stock antagonist of any sort of ocean voyage storyline that have a frequent tendency to crop up and add some exciting fight choreography to an otherwise mundane getting from point A to point B sequence, and our heroes will either have to fight off the thing trying to eat the ship, or it's going to segue them very neatly into an everyone has now been shipwrecked storyline. In this context, a sea monster is basically just an unusually exciting environmental hazard, filling the same role as dangerous weather or hidden rocks. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, totally respectable, but hear me out, what if we made them worse?
Oh my god, that was the third Narnia movie, wasn't it? Voyage of the Dawn Treader, I think is called. I remember seeing it in theaters, but I do not remember anything from that movie. I watched the first two Narnia movies a lot. I really enjoyed those two movies growing up. Third one, I watched it once and I think that was it, and I don't remember jack shit.
See, there's plenty of reasons to be terrified of the ocean, and Contains Big Hungry Monsters is one of the more grounded ones. But a sea monster can be a lot more than just a big predatory animal. A sea monster can be a physical manifestation of anything and everything terrifying about the—
Hold on, Clay. Have you read a book that I've not read? Because I've not read any of the Narnia books. You've read them all? He can read. Don't hate me. That was middle school? Yeah, I mean, it still fucking counts. The middle school books I read. Let's see. The only series let's see. For me, middle school was Hunger Games. So, like, reading Hunger Games late, I was reading it because the movies were, like, just announced or whatever. And then I also read the entire Ranger's Apprentice series. Or at least as it was back then. They have way more books now since then. Ranger's Apprentice, solid series. That was really it. I stopped reading pretty much once I hit high school. I still read a little bit in 8th grade, though not as much as I was in 7th grade. I read a lot. 8th grade, started slowing down, and then high school stopped pretty much entirely. And then I didn't start reading again until Game of Thrones season 8 came out and ended, and it sucked so bad I spite read the Song of Ice and Fire series. And then I was like, yo, this reading thing is kind of cool. So I started reading.
The ocean. For instance, pretty much every oceanic Lovecraftian horror, from the deep ones to Cthulhu himself, aren't scary because they're dangerous things in the ocean, they're scary because of what they represent. Deep ones, and more broadly, everything else about the Shadow over Innsmouth, embody the horrors of corruption and rot, and the unknown,
Ew,
deadly, and yet
disgusting.
terrifyingly familiar forces that might lurk
Disgusting.
just under the surface of the sea and the skin alike. And it's also probably about how Lovecraft thought interracial relationships were gross, because of course he did. But if we focus on the
Yeah.
things that scared H.P. Lovecraft that could also scare normal people, there's some solidly compelling horror to be found here in the nature of the ocean as this corruptive, terrifying force, simultaneously distant and far too close for comfort. And then there's Cthulhu, whose charming internet-induced marketable plushyification has made it easy to forget that the main focus of the story is how his brief stirring basically sends out a psychic shockwave that induces horrible nightmares and madness in large swaths of the population, and all he does to achieve this is go for a little walk and then get exploded by a boat. The horror of Cthulhu is not that he is an octopus dragon man, it's that just him rolling over in bed and checking the alarm clock does tremendous damage to humanity. It creates this feeling that everything we see as stable and solid is actually just a thin, fragile veneer over a yawning abyss of madness that is not just cold and dispassionate, but at times actively
Cthulhu?
hostile. That forces beyond our comprehension could be slumbering down there without our knowledge and with nothing we could do to mitigate the danger they posed, and that the supposedly reliable foundations of our understood reality are set on terribly shaky ground. And a lot of these feel like reasonable existential crises to have after pondering the ocean for any length of time. Yeah, it is vast and unknowable and capable of pulling some real hinky bullshit with basically zero warning. It does rot and corrode the things it touches, it eats away at construction and coastlines alike, and let's be real, it don't smell great. If you think the ocean is gross, it's really easy to embody that in a story that feels as gross as The Shadow over Innsmouth. If you think the ocean is terrifyingly vast and hiding potentially world-shattering dangers, you can slap all that theming on any number of submerged elder gods and call it a day. It'll capture the vibes cleanly while also putting a face to the danger and letting the characters contemplate it more directly than just not really digging the vibe. Sea monsters of this type are both deadly dangerous and not entirely knowable. They serve as manifestations of the sea as an infinitely horrific mystery. If they ever become entirely comprehensible to the audience, they lose a lot of that eldritch je ne sais quoi. And it's really easy to make a sea monster that represents something. Or everything. Scholars have been arguing over what Moby Dick means since it was published, because overly verbose obsession with big murder whale is the kind of thing you can just kind of keep reading into and never stop. Is the whale God? Is the whale death? Is the whale a scathing critique of transcendentalist philosophy? Who cares? All that matters is it's sure as hell not just a whale. And, appropriately enough, there's even more depth to be
Yeah, it's not just a whale, it's an angry whale.
found in these kinds of stories when it comes to how the characters think about the sea monsters. In the simplest cases, the sea monster is just an environmental hazard to be fought off or killed, and the characters basically just think of it like a problem to be solved. And if the sea monster represents the unknowable horrors of the deep, it's pretty common for the characters to straight up run, because you can't outfight the concept of the ocean being scary. Sometimes the characters develop personal vendettas against specific sea monsters, transforming them from run-of-the-mill giant murderfish into allegories for the destructive nature of revenge, or the consuming power of obsession, or the futility of trying to fight death itself or whatever. But for all the smack I talk about how my homegrown body of water is much nicer and less terrifying, yes, even Lake Superior, the ocean is also, quite frankly, a wondrous and unknown thing. It's the world's most famous inspirer
Lake Michigan's better. Like that.
of wanderlust and a manifestation of the infinite and beauteous unknown. It's arguably the last unexplored frontier left on Earth, with every expedition into its depths uncovering more new species and deepening our understanding of the functionality of our planet. And it's also scary as shit. There's a reason sailors are famously superstitious. If your survival from one day to the next is completely at the whims of something simultaneously life-giving and glorious and temperamental and deadly and too vast to meaningfully comprehend, you're gonna start pattern recognizing the hell out of anything that might let you not die about it. Ocean explorers appreciate the wonder of the sea, but it's not a thing that can be conquered or tamed, and thinking it is a really good way to get extremely dead about it. And this is a duality that can also make an appearance in the stories of sea monsters. Sometimes they're representative of a vast and beautiful / terrifying unknown, and the way our heroes navigate their interactions with them also reflects a greater relationship with the sea itself. In these stories, characters will probably be narratively punished for trying to destroy or take control of the embodiments of the sea, but
Man, Aquaman 1 was a good movie. It was. I enjoyed it.
they might be narratively rewarded for respecting or trying to understand them. It's kind of a specific variant of the learning to respect nature story format. The ocean can never be made harmless, but it can be better understood. One movie that built its entire foundation on this premise was 2022's The Sea Beast, a rare Netflix original that was actually straight up good. It starts off with a very simple premise. There are terrifying sea monsters and bold pirate aesthetic hunters.
Man, I've never even heard of this movie. Is it a like an actually made? Usually when it comes to these kinds of movies that I've never heard of that were Netflix originals, it usually means they were then foreign films. So I usually pay pretty good attention to good original movies. But
Hunters who make their living going out and killing them. It's a noble profession rooted in centuries of tradition founded on the heroic ideals of defending their home front from vicious monsters, and it's probably a coincidence that the king and queen live in such a swanky palace and seem to have such a vested interest in maintaining the narrative that they're hunting down.
oh wait, I think I have seen this.
And killing everything in the ocean in self-defense.
Well, not watched it, but I think I've seen trailers.
I mean, all the books say that the sea monsters started it, and a book with the official government seal of approval on it has never been written with any sort of ulterior motive. Anyway, shock and surprise, it turns out at least one of the sea beasts turns out to be much more compassionate than the stories would indicate, as after one of the characters cuts it loose from the ship so it won't drag them both to the bottom of the ocean, the sea beast recognizes this as a helpful act and helps them in return, bailing them out of a dangerous situation by temporarily eating them. This is, of course, not the best way to make friends, and our heroes are naturally terrified, but it becomes increasingly clear that this sea monster, while not going out of its way to be charming, is largely reactive. They did it a good turn, so it's helping them out in return. And they can't really hurt it, so it's mostly just patiently waiting for them to stop trying. This helpful neutrality is enough to make—
Man, I gotta watch this movie somehow. I don't have Netflix. I gotta figure out some way to watch it.
the characters start questioning what they've been taught about the inherent danger and cruelty of the sea beasts. Two helpless humans at the mercy of a monster, and it didn't just not eat them, it saved them.
I would never sail the seven seas.
The hunters' only data points come from pitched battles on the high seas, where it's really hard to tell if the thing they're fighting wants them dead for innate evil reasons or because they keep shooting it with cannons. The sea beast, like the ocean itself, is not interested in or capable of explaining itself, and it's not going out of its way to win them over beyond just stopping them from getting dead for helping it out that one time. So our heroes have to piece together—
Now, is this also one of those stories where it's like a dude who doesn't want to be a dad adopting a fatherless child or something like that? Like, is this one of those stories? Because if so, if we've got giant fucking sea monster that's actually adorable with that dynamic, count me in.
together what might really be going on with it. This leads them to question whether they're fighting the sea monsters to heroically protect humanity, or if they're just serving the exploitative empowerment of a system centuries old with a vested interest in total naval supremacy. If the sea beasts aren't a clear and present danger to the people living on the shores, and instead are just vibing in the ocean, which is their home, who benefits from the hunters dying in droves to kill them? The story quickly unfolds into a conversation about systems of power and propaganda, who controls the documentation of history, and how much we trust those stories to tell us what's right, and the simple question of how much of a right do we humans have to the total comprehension and control of the world. Some things just want to be left alone, and is it better to do that than to try and find new ways to exploit it for personal gain? This is a very pertinent conversation to have about the ocean specifically, which is constantly at risk of being ravaged by things like wide-scale industrial fishing or seafloor dredging or oil drilling, things that could kick up huge quantities of sediment and pollutants and destroy food chains and species interactions we don't even know about. The ocean is beautiful and dangerous, and we could try to fight it for its rich resources, but are we really that desperate or that callous or even that short-sighted?
Yes, humanity is.
This isn't an inherently selfless consideration aiming to save the sea critters out of the goodness of our hearts. The ocean is a huge carbon sink, absorbing a massive amount of the CO2 released into the atmosphere, including a lot—
Oh, what's that, United Nations? I'm American, we don't care about facts anymore.
Human emissions. The more of that we do, the more the ocean needs to absorb, a process that can cause the waters to acidify en masse, harming a lot of marine life in the process. The mechanisms by which the ocean absorbs and sequesters that excess airborne carbon aren't entirely understood, because the ocean itself isn't entirely understood, but the ocean's ability to mitigate excess CO2 is super important for mitigating the damaging effects of global warming, a thing humans have very good personal reasons to care deeply about. Oceanic carbon sequestration isn't a thing saltwater just magically does. It's deeply linked with oceanic ecosystems of life, many of which we are actively harming and can barely study because we can't get down there for more than a few hours at a time, and we can't easily bring back live samples without them exploding. To make a long story short, the ocean does a lot of weird shit that in the grand scheme of things we only very recently found out keeps the planet habitable. And if we start blindly fucking with it for shits and gigs and a few more zeros in some mining
I feel like this is the most I've ever heard Red swear in a single video.
interest bank account, we could very easily damage or break something structural to human life as we know it. It's a commonly quoted but incorrect statistic that the Amazon rainforest produces 20% of the world's oxygen, and that's why clear-cutting it is bad. And while clear-cutting is still bad for a myriad of reasons, the rainforest doesn't produce anywhere near that much oxygen. However, the ocean does. In fact, oceanic plankton produce about half of the Earth's oxygen.
Damn.
Now, that's also about as much as is consumed by all marine life put together. But that's just another part of the whole hugely complex system. We don't understand it well enough to safely fuck with it on any sort of large scale. And in cases like that, it's always better to err on the side of caution and do as much research as possible to try and understand it as completely as possible. And here's the thing about humans. We're really bad at understanding big, complicated things, but we're really good at telling stories. It's really hard to explain everything the ocean does and why it's not a good idea to catastrophically disrupt it or to assume we can predict the knockdown effects of things we might try to do to it. It's really hard to point at the ocean and say, that thing is actively right this very minute doing almost all the legwork to keep our atmosphere breathable. I know you can't see that it's happening, but trust me, it definitely is. That's a weird, complicated thing to say, and the further down you explain it, the more complicated it gets. It can be the tangled, convoluted work of a lifetime to unravel even a fraction of this beautiful, terrifying, structurally irreplaceable thing, and the work of several lifetimes to turn that research into a convincing reason to leave it alone, to study it respectfully from a distance instead of trying to conquer it or carve it up for prime cuts of mineral resource rights. But you know what's really simple to explain? You know what ain't broke? Here there be dragons. Maybe go somewhere else. So, yeah.
Fucking 10 out of 10 video, Red. 10 out of 10. I loved it. I loved how this was really not too much about, like, fictional sea monsters, but more so about humanity's, like, relation to just the sea in general, sort of. Yeah. Great video. I have no notes. This was fun. This was fun. I enjoyed it.